Welcome back to the Nico Robin character analysis series, where today we embark on the Water 7 arc. Sorry for the long delay from the last upload though. From doing Let's Plays and personal life events coming up, I had to put this on the back burner for a bit. With the series coming back, there's a few changes I want to make in how I release each part from now on. What I intend on doing is having each arc separated into parts that range from 20 to 30 minutes. This will make it so I can release each part and have it come out much sooner than what I was previously doing before. Once the arc is done, say for example once I get through all of Water 7, however many parts it'll take, I'll combine all the parts and put it into one big video. A supercut if you will. The other thing is, I will be looking strictly at the manga for this series from now on, since this is Oda's vision of the story and I want to analyze that strictly here. Maybe one day I'll do the anime on things that they added to the manga, but that will be a long time down the road from now. With that out of the way, let's get right into this arc. First off is the reason why I'm just covering the Water 7 portion of this. Among many fans, they lump together both Enies Lobby and Water 7 into one giant arc. For simplicity's sake, and to just make it easier on myself, we'll focus just on the Water 7 portion, which covers chapters 322 to 374. Since I'm done explaining how I'll be formatting this series from now on, let's begin analyzing this arc. Our story begins with the crew out at sea as they lowered its anchor in the Longring Longland area for 4 days before setting sail as they wait for Robin and Luffy to recover. First we see Luffy come out of his room and he's imitating what his body looked like when it was frozen, as a joke to Chopper and Usopp. Amongst the crew's banter, Robin comes out of her room and Nami is the first to notice her. Chopper asks how does she feel and if she's cold. She replies by saying thanks and that she feels much better because of him. This makes Chopper extremely happy and he twirls around. Nami tells her to not overdo it and take her time to rest. Sanji asks her if he should make something to warm her up and how's her appetite. She thinks about it for a moment and then asks for some coffee, to which Sanji happily makes for her. What is displayed once more here is just how worried the group is for her and just how relieved that she's up and moving around. But it is extremely thoughtful that the group remained anchored and waited for her to feel better before sailing ahead. Nami being the first to notice Robin emerge out of her room can suggest a lot of things. She was likely the most worried about her, and likely was the one that took care of her, or was just by her side as much as possible. Next to Chopper if I had to assume. I'm just guessing here, but based on how worried she was about the fact that Robin might be pushing herself to move around because of Luffy, is really super heartwarming of Nami to worry about her so much like this, and make sure she's not overdoing it. I just really appreciate that from our lovable navigator. Chopper asking if she's alright, and just Robin's reply to him, it gives me so much energy and vibes of just how she was reacting at the end of the Skypiea arc. A part of her true self deep down emerges in this single panel. Considering that we'll see much later on how much she wants to die when the crew confronts her in Enies Lobby, there's no sign of that here. This already shows a big contrast in how she feels about living or dying when we remind ourselves of how back in Alabasta, in the underground cave, she was fully embracing death to come after she was stabbed and the cave's now beginning to fall apart. And compare that to now, it's a major difference. She's sincerely thankful and grateful that Chopper saved her life. But despite how happy she is here, she still doesn't call him by his name, but Doctor. Again, there's still that tiny bit of her that holds herself back to saying people's names other than Luffy. Because of Robin's comments to Chopper, this makes him extremely happy, and it's always super wholesome and adorable to see that when he's complimented like that. Sanji asking if she needs something is once more a really great thing to see considering how important of a role he'll be later in this arc, and it reminds us of how much he cares for her well-being. Aside from his overlusting of Nami Robin, there's always a part of him that has this very super kind and thoughtful personality to him. I do find it interesting that Robin has a slight hesitation to wanting some coffee. Robin isn't really used to all this kindness and offerings of food and drinks, when all her life she basically had to fend for herself. This is referenced some 270 odd chapters later in the post-war arc, where she is being offered a room and declines, and tells the person to leave her be, as she used to do this all the time when she was alone. So it really goes to show how just her accepting some coffee from Sanji could possibly be a big deal for a person like her to trust someone enough to give her a drink without seeing it to be some sort of trap. And it's just also really sad to think that she's so used to being deceived that she has to worry about everything, even something simple as a drink. So in all fairness, this makes sense why she paused for a brief moment to think about what she would want. One final thing to address before moving on is that she never talks to them about the encounter that they just had with Aokiji. She never confirms or denies the things that Aokiji said about her to the crew. I found it odd how she didn't say anything on the matter to them, but later on we'll see why. She hated the fact that her past came to haunt her and involved the group that she values most. It really bothered her. This is likely what she was thinking in the panel where she's laying in bed. She's coming to realize the burden that she's putting upon everyone else and hates it because she loves them so much. Her ultimate fear of becoming too much of a problem for them and that they'll betray her in casting her aside, is creeping into her mind, and she had multiple days to think about this. It's this level of foresight that makes Oda a mastermind when it comes to characterization and the retroactive foreshadowing that he is known for doing. As the story progresses, Zoro and Luffy come across a giant frog doing a freestyle crawl in the sea. They turn the ship around to follow it, and Luffy says that they're going to barbecue it, to Chopper and Zoro's shock. Nami sees the lighthouse and wonders what it's doing there, but Luffy insists on wondering which way the frog is going. Robin tells him that it's heading towards the lighthouse, and Sanji goes on to say how to prepare the frog for a meal. Nami yells at the two to not encourage Luffy. This is just overall a very funny little exchange of dialogue, and Robin joins in with her deadpan and very straightforward delivery. While everyone else is freaking out, she remained calm, which adds the hilarity to all this. I always enjoy how after Robin's reply, Sanji chimes in and he likely thinks Robin wants to eat it too, but completely misunderstanding her, which is a funny moment, but does give us a bit of insight on how little he knows of her to not realize that she loves animals and creatures, which was shown in Jaya and Skypiea, as well as Oda's cover pages for certain chapters. The same can be said for Nami misunderstanding her as well. So while she may not really actually want to kill the frog, but she's just certainly going along with the captain has in mind, which I found interesting and neat that she's willing to go with this so casually. And also know how she responds to Luffy's question about where the frog is headed. And once more shows how she really values his questions more than really anyone else in that moment, and to reply to him while the others opted not to. As the story progresses, the group come across Kokoro, who lists them some places that they can go to. She tells them that the direction that they're headed to is Water 7. It's a bustling city known for its shipbuilding industry. Their technology is the best in the world. Ships are built under the commission by the world government. It has the world's best shipwrights, all gathered into one place. With this information, Luffy wants the carpenter on his crew repair the Mary's ship as it's in bad condition. In the next chapter, we'll go into a bit more details on the problem with the ship currently. During this, we can take away a couple of things that will set up some events for later in the story. Like the government train that will play a role later in this arc, and with the mention of government people there, Robin will eventually confront those type of people again. It was established all the way back in Alabasta how it was stated that Robin hated government people. So all this is secretly setting up to events to come, and again, it's always so well done and natural feeling. As the group sets sail, Kokoro reminds them to watch out for the government people. In the previous panel before, we see a shot of the crew all together, so she absolutely must have heard this from her, which is odd that there isn't a reaction panel of Robin upon hearing this. I was thinking to myself, why wouldn't she be a bit more worried about this? But then I was reminded how in Alabasta, when she was confronted by a bunch of soldiers in Tashi, she easily beat them. So based on the evidence that this series has already showcased, this means that Common Marine soldiers in Tashi, who was at the time a Master Chief Petty Officer, which is the 13th highest rank in the Marine, aren't really a threat to her. So she's able to handle them without any issues. So this is likely why she wasn't worried when it was mentioned that the government is there, because nothing specific was stated that higher groups from the government are on that island. After leaving the ship station, they head for Water 7. Robin watches on as Luffy makes up a drawing of his ideal version of a carpenter that he's looking for, while Usopp and Sanji make fun of his ridiculous and scary drawing. Nami tells them of their allowance that they'll be getting for their 1 week stay while the log pose resets to their next destination. All of them celebrate and thank Nami, as Robin just simply watches on and smiles. This in itself is a harmless bit of fun that the group are having, but to Robin this means so much to her. She's seeing this environment of people being nice and caring to each other and just being fun all around. This is so foreign to her, and yet all she can do is smile. As we get to know more about Robin later on, this singular panel will just hit that much more in the future. Overall, I love stuff like this, and it has some of the best retroactive foreshadowing ever. One last thing to note before moving on is that Robin isn't a stupid person. I know that sounds obvious to mention, but remember that the event that she had with Aokiji. She for sure must know that her time left with the crew is on borrowed time. Aokiji knows where she's at now, and it won't take long before they try to take her away from the crew. What we know of now, and seeing this panel, it's a bit of a calm before the storm type of feeling. She knows that this could be one of the last days that she has left with them before chaos ensues, and she's just simply enjoying these final moments. As she comes across the island of Water 7, Robin comments on how pretty it is. It's a simple and harmless line, but remembering how in Skypiea she mentioned to Zoro how the group sees adventure as sailing and exploring new lands, which is something she never thought of before. As stoic she can be at times, she can still admit when she sees something genuinely beautiful looking. This is yet another instance of her being in awe of the world and how beautiful it can be. After the life that she had for so many years, being with this crew has allowed her to see that even in her darkest days, life can be bright. She's being able to express herself once again, and normally this is a pretty commonplace stuff, but for her this is a big deal. I simply love it. It just makes me happy to see her so happy. Chopper asks her if the town is actually in water and if they're sinking. Robin says no. The foundation is built under the water's surface. She tells him to look underneath the foundation of the houses and he finds pillars. This is always nice to see Robin explain something to Chopper on questions like this, and it's neat to see how quickly she's able to figure things out, like the structure of the houses, almost immediately. Her skills of being able to observe and figure things out very quickly is on display once more here. Also, take note on how she's smiling when she's answering Chopper's question. This isn't the first time that this has occurred, and to me, it shows how she loves the fact that she feels so useful to anyone like this. And this is coming from someone like Chopper, who could be very childlike at times when he expresses himself and just in wonder and awe and amazement of the world around him. So she must love the fact that she could help someone out like this. I think this subtly suggests that in her past, she was never really viewed like a person and more like an encyclopedia to any crew that she was on previously. A very good example of this is the most recent crew that she was with prior to the Straw Hats, with Crocodile, where he only wanted her for her knowledge of the poneglyphs, with the ancient weapon that he was looking for. When they first arrived at Water 7, a civilian tells them that pirates get in trouble if they enter from the front. They have to steer over to the other side of town. And then another person tells them that they can't come this way. This later makes Nami say, "Why don't the people fear the pirates?" Zoro says pirates are customers too. And Robin mentions, or they have really strong bodyguards who don't fear pirates. I just really appreciate how she replies to Nami's question, and even theorizing why people don't fear the pirates on this island. Zoro and Robin both have good points that are being brought up here, and Robin's comment is a valid possibility too. The little banner here is well done, and I do appreciate how she tries to ease Nami and her worries by trying to figure out why people don't fear the pirates here. Luffy, Usopp, and Nami go into Water 7 to find a person named Iceberg and give him the introductory letter that they got from Kokoro. He'll help them to get the ship fixed, and they need to go somewhere to exchange gold into cash. Back at the ship, Sanji asks Zoro where Robin is since she's not there. Zoro tells him that she went out earlier with Chopper and they had some shopping to do. This leaves two of them on the ship, to which Sanji calls that boring. He says how he'll go and get some shopping done as well, and he leaves to go find her. What I found interesting about all this is that once again Robin doesn't tell Sanji where her and Chopper are headed, only to just Zoro. This isn't a case where Zoro knows that she's not on the ship, but he knows exactly where the two are headed, so either Chopper or Robin made sure to let him know where they're going. Going shopping seems like something Robin specifically wanted to do that we'll see later, and Chopper just likely went along with her for company. It is a bit weird and odd how Sanji isn't informed on this. It's not clear who told Zoro where they went off to. At this point, I spent so many days rewrites and re-recordings and re-editing of just trying to figure out all this, and I just got really tired of just thinking about this so far. But if I had to make an educated guess, I think it was Chopper who told Zoro, and I got a decent case for this. Chopper and Robin have this really cute mother and son dynamic, so if Robin was wanting to go shopping for new clothes, she probably asked him to come along with them. Chopper likely got happy to hear that and being able to spend time with her going out, and it just so happened that as they were leaving, Zoro was there, so Chopper mentioned it to him about where they were headed. And by accident, Chopper just simply forgot to inform Sanji because he was just so excited. As you've seen throughout the story, Chopper could be very childlike at times at the wonderment of the world, and I would imagine he was just very eager to explore this island just as much as Robin is, even if it's just something as simple and mundane as going shopping. I don't know where or what Sanji was doing at the time when they were leaving, but it is overall really odd how he just didn't know where they went off to. Robin, I would imagine, asked Chopper to tag along with her, and unlike the last time where she ventured off in Jaya where she went off on her own, this time around, she has a much more newfound level of appreciation for Chopper for saving her life. But all this is a really subtle and good way to show her growth by just merely wanting some company. We'll see this in her flashback where she's so desperately wanting a family and just people to hang out with. I would guarantee that after the events of Longland, she's more than happy to spend time with Chopper. And we'll see even later that she trusted Chopper enough to let him know something about herself to him. And I can't really blame Robin for not letting Sanji in on where they're going, because she doesn't think he is worthy of letting him know what she's doing, nor does she feel inclined to do so with how he acts, and likely knew he would just go and follow her shopping and probably annoy her. Though she's too kind to ever say that to him, which is a bit of a trait that we've seen back in Long Ring Longland, with the cotton candy scene where she merely just put on an act that she was pleased with him, that she got handed food, but once he was gone, she gave the candy to Chopper. And Robin just probably appreciates Chopper just being himself and, treating her like a person and not like an object. It's a small detail, but it certainly gives you a look at how Robin views certain crew members up to this point. Back with Robin and Chopper, we see the two leave the backstreet shopping area with a new outfit, and even going out in public without her hat, which is a contrast to what she was doing in Jaya, which I believe at this point in the story, her wearing hats is a way of disguising herself. She did this in Alabasta, Jaya, Skypiea, and much later on in Dressrosa, where she makes it a point to pull her hat down because she's hiding. She did that since CP0 was nearby, and they are in enemy territory. Because of all that, they put on disguises to hide themselves. which I think supports my idea that she sees hats as a disguise for herself. In Sabaody, she's wearing a hat too, and originally I didn't know what way to go with my thoughts on it. I'll leave that to be open-ended, and we'll discuss that when we get to it later in the series. It's rather interesting how she's not wearing a hat here, and she knows more than ever now that Aokiji and the government know where she's at, and we as an audience know where the next island they're headed to. You'd think she'd wear it like usual like the other time when she went out like in Jaya. Maybe she doesn't think wearing a hat will matter because her hideout is found, so any attempt to disguise herself is useless. She may have thought of this during this time where she was resting in bed. She decided, or at least thought to herself, that if they come for her again, she'll give herself up under a special condition. It's almost like as if she wants to be found now or something. I didn't really mean to go on such a tangent about it, but it is important to think about all these little details very thoroughly in a series like this. With all that out of our way, let's continue on. Chopper directs her to a shop full of faces, and Robin corrects him that it's a mask maker. She's seen people walking around with those masks on. Chopper thought they just had funny looking faces. She says that on another island on the sea train route, a costume festival is being held. He asks her how does she know that, and she replies by saying that she heard people on the street talking about it. How could you pick up all that, says Chopper. It's an old habit of hers, she replies with. Ever since she was little, she observed people's moods and listened to them talk. Chopper calls her amazing. She finds a bookstore and points to it as Chopper gets excited and wants to stop in. To which she has no problems with that as she's about to head in. She giggles and then the masked figure walks past her and he says that he's with CP9. Chopper tells her that he's going in and Robin is shocked and sweating. As he walks away, Robin is still shocked and it stopped her in her tracks. She looks behind with a scornful expression on her, and by the time Chopper comes out of the bookstore, Robin is gone. A couple of things to look at in this scene is that we see the two walking along the back street shopping area, and we only see Robin with the new clothes. So Chopper didn't really want anything and primarily went to accompany her, which I found to be really wholesome. What's also very wholesome is Chopper and Robin's interaction together here. I adore how Robin corrects him about the shop full of faces and how it's a mask maker. It's just something simple, but very cute all things considered, and she never has any issues with how literal Chopper can interpret things at times, because Robin herself tends to do that sometimes. Two examples of her doing something like this will be seen later on in Thriller Bark and in Dressrosa. Robin explains that she saw people walking around with masks on, which is a pretty simple observation in general, but what is impressive is that she knows about an island where costume festivals being held, and how this is a habit of hers to observe people and listen to them talk, and has been doing it since she was little. In hindsight later on in the story, we kinda know why she does this, and why she's so careful around people, and she's always eavesdropping on everyone. Despite this being like a really casual, positive trait, there's a hint of sorrow in knowing of this with what we know of her later on. The things that Robin's describing here could be an early sign of observation hockey, which has yet to be fully established in the series up to this point in the story. The definition for observation hockey is that it's a form of hockey that grants the user a sixth sense that allows them to sense the presence, strength, and emotions of others, as well as gain limited precognitive abilities. Some of that does line up with what she's doing here to some scale. And earlier in the arc, we see Zoro asleep, as he's about to be attacked by the Frankie pirates, only for him to wake up. That is some early instances of observation hockey based on the definition. And the same can be said with what we'll see later with Sanji in this arc. It's really interesting and cool to see something like this. Even though Robin doesn't officially have this ability, it wouldn't shock me if Oda later does give her this ability, considering that she's been studying people's actions all her life. Overall, it's nice for her to be willing enough to tell this to Chopper, since this is really only the second time in the manga that she's opened up to anyone. The first one being Zoro. With Chopper being shocked by all this, he calls her amazing. And what is odd is that Robin goes silent with those three dots and then changes the subject. It's like she doesn't really like to be complimented or just has no idea how to respond when someone says something genuinely nice about her. Later in the arc, when Sanji finds Robin, she mentions how she didn't deserve all the kindness that they shown her. So with that, we can take that bit of information and place it here, and this could be why, when Chopper said something nice about her, she probably thought to herself how she doesn't deserve any praise, and this is why she's quiet for a moment, and then she changes the subject and points to the bookstore. It's something simple and small, but with how particular Oda's been in character interactions in the past, this wouldn't surprise me if this was planned. I don't think Robin expected Chopper to be so excited about a bookstore based on her little bead of sweat on the back of her head, but it's still nonetheless wholesome how she has no issues with wanting to go with Chopper into the bookstore and even does a little bit of a giggle when she heads in, which really displays how much of a good time she's having since she doesn't always display that giggle. The last time she did that is when Luffy had the afro during a Davy Back fight. The masked figure is certainly something to note as well with how much it scared her. It's mainly the name of CP9 being mentioned that brings immediate sweat and concern to her face, and Robin doesn't get scared like that very often. The most recent time that Robin was this terrified is when Aokiji was seen. So before we know anything about what CP9 is, we have to take a good educated guess that this is a very big deal to her. She then goes with the masked figure and is gone. And now the mystery of the arc, at least for now, is why did she disappear? I can't blame Chopper for not realizing her being scared in the moment due to the fact that he was just so excited and eager to go into the bookstore, and he does later apologize to Sanji that he didn't notice that she disappeared sooner because he was so absorbed into the books. And of the cast of Straw Hats, he's the youngest, so I can forgive him for that. And with all this mystery and all this hype building up, I feel like this is a good time to conclude this part. I think with her disappearance here is a good cliffhanger for what's to come in the future of the series. I don't know how soon part 2 will come out, but I'm all the more eager to work on a series with the new format I'm making to make it less stressful on me. I'll see you all later in part 2. Take care.